Do you ever need a more visual way to manage your projects? Whether you call it Kanban or Kanban, this layout is super useful to quickly and visually see where projects are in your pipeline. So in today's video, I'm going to show you how to build this from scratch using source data, just like this, where you can manage and set all your options and then see it all reflected right here. And so let me just change one of these in progress to completed. And you can see now it just shifted over into our completed column. All right, so let's jump right in. So we'll call this first tab our tasks. And then let's add some columns here. So we'll start with stage, due date, client name, project name, amount, and notes. So you can adjust these as needed for your purposes. And then go ahead and select these columns here, right click and delete. And just a little bit of formatting here to make everything look clean and tidy. Just like that. So I did just a little bit of background with the fill, foreground of the text, and a little bit of borders, and then wrapping the text there. All right, and then let's go ahead and freeze this top row, and this will allow us to scroll down and still see that top row, just like that. And then we're going to add a drop down here, a date selector, and then some freeform entries. So again, you can update and change these columns to what you need for your purposes. What we're going to do here is kind of a quote through invoice paid scenario. And so let's go ahead and do that. So I'm just going to start with the very basics. So let's go ahead and create our Kanban or Kanban, however you want to say that, however you say that in your context, board here. And then we're going to do our stages. And so let's do quote, upcoming, in progress, completed, and invoiced. Again, depending upon your approach with this, it could be as simple as 3 here or more or subcategories as well. So let's go ahead and add a little space around this. And then I'm going to make these a little wider as well. And then we'll do a little formatting as we start to build this out. So go ahead and just center these for now. And then I'll go ahead make that one smaller there as well. Get rid of the rest of these columns. And delete. All right, so there's our very basic layout. And then I'm going to do one more tab. And we'll call this settings. And then in our settings, so we can do just a quick column here with our drop-down options. So I could pull them from here, but I want one more, which would be called paid in this instance, and that's going to make it drop off this board. And so I need a spot to put that. So I could put it here, but I'm going to use this a little bit later to make this a little more sophisticated. So if you're just doing just this first step, then you can just do it here and you can do quote, upcoming, and so forth. But I'm going to put these across the top, just like this. And then go ahead and delete these. And we can do a little formatting here, like we have been. And so I changed that to a white just to go between these. And then we can drag this down as well if we want to, or we can leave it as it is. And maybe we'll make these a little wider as well. So we will fill these later, but for now, in the simple version, we only need this. So let's go ahead and populate our settings here. And so I'm going to select this whole column by clicking on A, and then I'm holding down Control and clicking on Stage. So that way I'm just selecting A2 through the bottom. So there's multiple ways you can do that. That's just the flow I use. So you can start here and drag down and start with that and go drop down. And then if you want to do that way, then just make sure you drop off that and reference there. And either way, from there then we'll do the same thing, drop down from arrange. And then we can click on the select data range, click in here, then go to settings, and then select this top row. Or again, if you just want a simple selection, just do it straight down and you just select it just like that. So let's go ahead and do that. And then what I'm going to do here as well is we're going to color code these. And so I'm just going to pick some of the default colors here. You can pick whatever colors you like. Go back to tasks. Now we have that showing up just like that. Perfect. So if we select quote, shows up just like that. We can go ahead and give ourselves a little more room. And then for here, if I double click, nothing's happening. So I want to add a double click to select a date. So I'm going to do the same thing to select this column. Click on the top, hold down Control to deselect the top row. And then over here, if this is still up, you can just hit add rule. Otherwise, you right click and do data validation. So I'm just going to do it from here and then change this to is valid date and go ahead and reject input. What this makes it do is we can double click and select date just like that. All right, and the rest of these we can just leave free fill for now. So we could just add some sample data here. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. Just like that. All right, and so we're going to run with this data and populate our Kanban. It's like this. So let's just do a very simple filter formula here. And then we're going to make this a little more complicated in a minute. We'll combine this to make this more sophisticated. But for now, let's just do just the project name, just to make this simple. And then select our stage here. And so ultimately what we're looking for is this task D to D and A to A with a comma in between. And then this one we're going to do equals, and then we're going to come back to this first tab to quote. So we hit enter. You can see that pulls in now. Now I'm going to copy this across. Before I do so, if I drag it across now, you can see that these change. So it changed from D and A to E and B. So we don't want that. And so what we'll do here is hit F4 on my keyboard, and it just adds these dollar signs. So if you do not have F4 or it does not add those dollar signs, you can just add them before the D and before the 2, just like that. And the same thing here. And then we don't need to do it on this one because this is what we're comparing to. So as we drag it over, I want this one to update. So that's updating just like we want. Drag it all across. You can see that. Now, one thing keep in mind, let's just change all the in progress. If we go to completed and completed, then we have an NA error. So what we probably want to do is wrap this in an if error. What this will do is it'll keep it blank. So just like that. All right, now to finish up our very simple Kanban one here, I'm going to do the same color coding here. And let's actually add a little bit of room. I'm going to do a little bit more here before we're done. So let's just add our colors here. So we can go ahead, this a little bigger. Maybe I'll resize this row like that. And then what we'll add here is just a simple count. So let's just do count B4 to B and see how many we have for each one. And then we could add a little text here. So we could do something like this and another ampersand and then do count and do this whole thing. What that will allow us to do is see that there's 5 out of 15 under quote. So if I drag this over, it kind of works, except for you can see how this thing is dragging over as well. So we want to lock this one, and this one's fine. So now if we drag it over, you can see now we can see 0 out of 15, 4 out of 15, 2 out of 15, and so forth. So if we come back to our tasks and change these back to in progress, you can see they pop back up in here. All right, so let's do a little bit more formatting. So for example, often with these, you want it to have an error if you have more than a certain amount. And so we could just add that here. So for example, if it's more than 10, for example. We could say too many projects. Let's just do something simple like that. And then drag that over. And then let's go ahead and actually make this too many. There we go, too many projects. Let's go ahead and undo that. And then let's move forward. So I'm going to add one more row here. I'm going to color these the same. Just like that. And then let's make this row a little bit bigger as well. Something like that. And then let's make these maybe a white text. There we go, maybe a little bigger. All right, so we're getting closer. Let me get rid of these grid lines real quick. And then another thing as well, since we're starting here, we could restrict ourselves to 10 rows, or maybe we'll leave a couple extra at the bottom. So maybe just from here, I'll delete the rest of these. Right click, delete rows. And then what I'm going to do here is just add a little conditional formatting. And we're just going to pick a nice color just like that, and then do the same thing across the board. All right, and then let's add some borders here to give us a little definition. So I'm going to change this to our widest border, and I'm going to do it just on the vertical. And then I'm going to come down here and do the same thing on the horizontal. So I can just keep the same settings, hit it just like that. All right, so that's the very basics of a simple Kanban board. Now what I'm going to do is you might want to see a little more data than just project 11. And so we're going to go through that. And the other thing is how to do some custom sorting. So what if you want to see them in a specific order, not just in the order that they are here? Because right now it's just showing up in the same order. So let's start with adding a little more data to what we have here, and then we'll go through the custom sorting. So there's a couple ways we can do this. One, we can add another column here, and we do it just like this. So let me show you an example here of what we could do. So we can put together a custom string. So we start with equals because we're making a formula, and we can start with client name. Now I may want to say client name and do something like that. So you can see there, it's showing up client name 1. Now, if I want multiple pieces of data, I probably need to add a new row. And so the way you do that is ampersand, and then it's character 10. And so let's go ahead and add another piece so we can see how that works. And so let's do project, ampersand. And what I'm doing here is basically using double quotes for each of my pieces of text, and then ampersand to connect other pieces. So ampersand and then that cell, and then another ampersand and then that character 10, another ampersand and then another string inside double quotes, and then we'll do that project. So just like that. Now you can see we have client on line 1, this character 10 to give us a new row inside the same cell, and then project D2. So we can do the same thing if we want to add them out in the notes. So let me go ahead and do that now. And then for this amount, I could just do like this, amount, and then E2. But if you notice, that's not formatted, doesn't have the $sign. And so what I'm going to do here is wrap this in text, and then I can do a custom format here. So I can do $, for example. And then if you just want a simple comma delimited where thousands of places, you can do something like that. And if we change this to 1500, for example, you can see it shows up just like that. So that'd be a quick way to do that. And then finally, if we want to add the notes, we can do the same thing and just do character 10. And then we'll do our notes. Just like that. So now we can drag that down. Let me actually fix that real quick there. All right, perfect. So drag that down. And so now we have our card text, for example. Now the only thing with this is it makes all of these a lot taller. And so if that doesn't bother you, you can do it right here, just like this. But one thing you may want to do if this is kind of messing up and what you want to do here, what we could do is just make a new tab. We'll call this tasks helper. And then what I'm going to do here is just get this whole piece of data, including the headers. And then where that is not, you go to blank. So there's our data. This will bring in automatically whatever we add in tasks. And then I could just bring this over. Accidentally zoomed in there. And then go back over here and do the same thing here. Now, I want to make sure it keeps applying no matter how many we have. And so what I'm going to do is actually wrap this in an array formula. And then do if A2 to A is blank, do nothing. Otherwise, we'll display our custom string. And then all I'm going to do is go through and change each one where I'm referencing a single cell and change that to the whole column. So one more F, just like that. And there we go. So now we have card title. I can go ahead and get rid of the rest of these columns again. So I'm just going to click on this one, drag over, hold down Shift, and delete. And I'm just going to go ahead and format this again just to keep things consistent, even though this one doesn't have to be visible. And then let's do a single width here, just like that. All right, so this doesn't have to be visible. And then what we could do is change this to tasks helper, for example. And then what we'll actually want to do here, so right now it's referencing that one, but we want it to come from G. So let's do that real quick. G, and drag that over, except if I drag it over now, it's going to apply that color as well. So let's do copy, select these cells by clicking and dragging, and then paste formula only, just like that. So now you can see that it's pulling all that data into here. All right, so that's great. Now, one more thing here is what if we want a custom sorting, maybe by due date? So if we look at this, for example, we have 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Now, what if we want the soonest due date on the top? So if we come over here, we can actually get rid of this now. That makes it a little easier to process through. So let's say, look at this one. So if we want this one on the top, let's say the due date was this, and these were actually a little further down, let's say February 3rd, and let's just go ahead and paste that there. So if we want this one, since it's the soonest due at the top, then how would we do that? So right now, this one's at the bottom. So what we can do is use this settings tab to do that. And so what we'll do is something similar to this. So I can go ahead and grab this and pull this over here. And then I just need to change this to A1. Okay, so now we have our data coming in, but I want to sort this by whatever's in column B. So let's go ahead and do that. So what we're going to do is add a sort. Now the only funny thing is in this filter, we have to do it twice because otherwise it messes it up. Or we could use a query, but a query is a little more complicated. So here's what we're going to do. We're just going to do this. And let me show you what goes on inside this sort formula. So if we hit this formula help, so there's the range. And then the sort column, which we need to change to B. That was our due date column. And then is ascending. So that would mean the smallest or earliest date is on top. So this is great. Now the only thing we have to do is do this one as well. So if you had more criteria, we have to do it on all these. I'm going to paste this, and I just need to change this to A, just like that. And now we can see 15 is now on top. So that's just what we expected. So what if we take one of these and make it 29, now 13, then 15, then the rest. So let's check that out. 13, 15, and the rest. All right, so now we can go ahead and drag this across, and there we go. And so now all we have to do is change this one to array formula and refer to our settings, just like that. And now we can copy this, paste that formula across, and now we can have a custom sort based on our due date. So with this, you could add whatever sort column you want. You can also add more sort columns. So if you want to sort it by maybe due date, or you could sort by client name or project name, or even amount if you want the biggest amount in the top, and then you just change that true to false on the amount column and so forth. All right, and then you can use this tab. You can use what's called the filter tool to help you manage what's happening here. And so, for example, if I click up here in the upper left, it selects the whole tab. And then I can come over here and hit this create a filter. And then what this allows me to do is I can select and see whatever stage I want. So I can hit clear. And if I want to see, for example, quote, I can do that. And I can work on just the quote ones. And so I can update, I can do whatever here. And so then I can cycle through whichever other ones I need on the statuses, or if I need to pull up a certain project, or if I want to do by a certain due date. And so you can also just sort this data. And so we can see by whatever is upcoming soonest here, or we can sort by name. We can sort by those things like that. So we can sort in whichever way we like to pull that through and then manage it from this tab. And then all those changes will automatically reflect on our Kanban. So, and there we go. So that is it for today's video. I hope this helps you to see how you can use this simple tool and structure to create your own Kanban or Kanban board for your business or even your own personal projects. And so make sure to check out the other videos on our channel for more tutorials on both Google Sheets and AppScript.